So still looking at our Explore activity, random variation. After students complete an Explore activity, there is a CER, claim, evidence, reasoning evaluation that they'll do. And it is a formative evaluation to provide you with information regarding how they are doing about mastery of concepts and skills. And so you can see in this particular one, they're asked to write a scientific explanation telling why offspring do not look alike, why all offspring do not look alike. Those that they used during this activity, and then they are to make a claim about that. What is their evidence for that claim that they are stating for that hypothesis? And then their reasoning behind that claim. So really getting them into that higher order, explaining their thinking, inquiry-based type of thinking. All right, and then you always have a key for the CER there as well. And we do our planning session Friday. We'll talk a bit about how that we get students ready to do CER. Then after an activity comes explain. Now I want to preface again that we want to think about how we can do some exploration with students in a virtual setting. And then more information during our discussion with our STEM coach will come on the 12th as well. So explain brings us back over here to the third E. So after students have explored that concept or skill, in this case, talking about inheritance, genetics, then that's when we're really going to get into vocabulary. And we're going to help students to develop explanations for the phenomena that they experienced. So they're using their own thinking through that explore. Now is when we're going to get into, some more teacher-facilitated learning. And that we always want to remember this right here, that the significant aspect of explain is that explanation follows experience. And of course, the experience came in during Explore and to some extent during the hook that was used during Engage. So let's go back and look at what we have for Explain for this particular scope of inheritance and variation of traits. I always recommend that we use STEMscopepedia. And you'll see there's one of these in every scope, and it has reading, it incorporates vocabulary, as of course you can see pictures for students to be able to visualize the concepts, and then a little activity for them to do at the bottom. So this that you see here, of course, that's an S for student. So this is what it would look like on a computer or an iPad or something for a student. And you can see that there are places for them to select answers here. And to manipulate this graphic as well. If we were just using print materials, like sometimes we were doing last year in person, those can be accessed over here. And I want to point out this teacher-facing document here with the linking literacy. So what this does is it incorporates a KWL chart with the STEMscopepedia. And when that linking literacy is offered during a scope, I recommend you can actually use this with STEMscopepedia, instead of just doing STEMscopepedia alone, then you can incorporate that KWL with it at the same time. And so all the resources that you need for that are right here. Things can be downloaded and then posted to Google Classroom. There's also picture vocabulary for the explicit words that are called out by the curriculum. Again, during planning time, there may be other words that need to be highlighted or discussed for a particular scope. But these are here for students to have, back to that Morzano's vocabulary as well, picture, the term, and then definition for that term. They have updated this year the content connections videos, made them a little more interesting, dynamic for students. And they're typically not very long, just a couple of minutes each. And they usually have some type of pre-work that the student will do before watching the video or after watching the video. But it just brings back that intentionality of where, we're showing a video for a reason, for learning, and so we want to make a hypothesis by writing something about our thoughts before we view it, or encapsulating our thoughts after we watch the video, one or the other. And in this particular one, click over here. This one apparently is answered after the video. Looks to me more like a reflection than it was a prediction hypothesis one. And so you might show one or both of these videos, just depending on, the checks for understanding that you're doing with students throughout, where they are. There's also a science rock, which is a little a little song that students can do to help them remember some of the key components of traits and behaviors. All right, and then also something to explore is looking at the eScopepedia and the science rock. But all of these are important for doing that follow-up explanation, giving students more context around the skills and concepts involved in the standard or standards for the scope. And so typically it will take, for middle school, you could usually do, all of these in one setting, since the times for class each day are quite a bit longer in middle school. For elementary school, it may take into the second day to do several of these. We really want to make sure students engage in STEMscopepedia, or in this case, the linking literacy, which has the KWL and STEMscopepedia incorporated, some vocabulary time, and then at least one video. But again, we'll talk more about the expectations there with that during our planning time. So next is elaborate, and I want to draw us back to our 5 E's. And this is opportunities for students to apply what they have learned to a new situation, so that they're getting deeper into their understanding of that concept or skill. And there typically, is opportunity in here for students to talk with one another, with a partner or a group, to really ingrain what they have learned so that they can apply it not just to the same situation that they had during the Explore activity, but to a new one as well. So there is always a math connection within Elaborate, and it talks to us about what that is. In this case, measuring printed objects with a ruler. And we're thinking about inherited traits, so it's going to be all plants and animals here. So we got that math integration. that goes along with second grade math skills. Some more reading science practice, which can be very helpful. So there's a passage and then questions. And this, again, would be that student view on a computer. We have all the S's there. So we see those are student-facing documents. Next is some simulation practice. So here students get the opportunity to engage directly with objects on the screen in order to just to interact more like they would in a lab environment. So this is great for our virtual time when we can't be doing that in person lab type of activity. So in this one, eating with a spoon is that learned or inherited. And then it gives us that instant checkpoint so students can know whether they mastered that or not. So there's 2 of those. Actually, it looks like this one. Those were different. It looks like those might actually be the same. Then there's a virtual investigation. So this might be something also that could be done, alongside, or, if we had to, in place of what would typically be done hands-on during Explore. But when possible, we want to do some modified Explore activities virtually, but this would be something also students could engage in if need be. Then our last E would be to look at the evaluate. And of course, when we're thinking about evaluation, that's the final phase in the 5 E's, so that students are reviewing, reflecting on their knowledge, their skills that they have gained. And it provides, of course, the opportunity for the teacher to do a checkpoint of what students have gleaned during the course of the scope. And so there are always 3 with STEMscopes. Another claim, evidence, reasoning. The one we saw previously was just for the Explore activity. This one is for the entire scope. So it gives us a scenario, a prompt, and then students are to give their claim, their evidence, or their reasoning for their thoughts about that particular scenario and prompt. Then there's an open-ended response where students are given a particular scenario and then asked to answer that question. Very important for students here. We can really see, how well they've truly grasped a concept or skill and where there may need to be some intervention. Then there is multiple choice assessment. Again, you notice by the S's that these are all student-facing here. There's a Google Doc as well. If we were in person, if you want to give a print version of this, there that is. And we'll talk also in the next, when planning, and then throughout the next few weeks, about enhanced multiple choice and how that will make these multiple choice questions more dynamic. If we see, based on evaluation, that students need intervention, there's more work on that here. And if we see here, or certainly along the way, that some students need that acceleration, they need an extension, that's where some different activities and things come in here, because some of our learners, all of our learners are at different places in the learning, and some may need some extension there with these concepts, that they're ready for that, because we always want to pique their natural interest and keep them learning. Thank you for your time, for engaging in this with me. We'll continue to explore this together over our planning time this Friday, I believe that's the 7th, and then the following week.